There is a moment when a face is still there, but the person is suddenly gone, and you feel it instantly. The eyes go blank, the room changes, nothing dramatic happens, no one shouts, no one leaves, but something turns cold, and your body notices before your mind does. You have probably felt this before. You say something simple. You ask a question. You bring up a detail that should not matter that much. And then their eyes lose something. Not focus, not attention, something more human than that. It is like the connection drops in real time. You are still looking at them. They are still looking at you. But you no longer feel received. That is why the moment stays with you. Not because it was loud, because it was silent, because it felt small on the outside and strangely huge on the inside. You leave the conversation and keep replaying it. What was that? Why did the air feel heavier all of a sudden? Why did their face seem normal but deeply off? Why did you feel like you crossed into somewhere you were not supposed to go? Most people think blank eyes mean one simple thing: disinterest, coldness, maybe even malice. But that is usually too shallow, because the blank look often appears at the exact moment something internal becomes too active, not too empty. What looks like nothing is often a hidden shift, a withdrawal, a shutdown, a sudden move away from emotional contact. The person does not always choose it consciously. Sometimes it happens in less than a second. A part of them feels exposed, cornered, flooded, or threatened. So the mind starts reducing outward signal. Expression drops, warmth drops, eye engagement drops. And what remains is that unnerving flatness. This is why it feels so strong psychologically. Human beings do not just look at eyes to gather information. We use eyes to confirm presence, safety, intent, responsiveness. We are constantly scanning for signs that the other mind is still with us, still open, still reachable. When the eyes go blank, your brain reads it as a relational rupture. Not always danger in the obvious sense, but a break in contact, a sudden loss of access. That is why even a brief blank stare can make your chest tighten. Your thoughts speed up. Your own face becomes more careful. You may start filling the silence, explaining too much, backtracking, smiling when you do not mean it, trying to restore something you can feel slipping away. And this happens fast, usually before you even understand why you are doing it. Part of the intensity comes from prediction. Your brain is always trying to guess what comes next in a social moment. A nod, a reaction, a flicker of emotion, some sign of mutual presence. But when the eyes flatten instead, the prediction fails, and unresolved signals create tension. Your mind hates unclear threat. It would rather face anger than vacancy. At least anger tells you where you stand. Blankness does not. Blankness makes you search. And what you search for is not just meaning. It is access. Because blank eyes can feel like being locked out of someone while they are right in front of you. That is what makes the moment so unsettling. You are not simply seeing less emotion, you are witnessing emotion disappear behind a wall. This tends to happen in very specific moments. The first is when you touch a truth someone was trying not to feel. It might be a direct question, a calm observation, a small comment that lands too close to an insecurity. You ask, "Are you actually okay with that?" And for a second, their eyes empty out. That can be the mind interrupting contact to manage the hit, not because the question was cruel, because it reached something live. The second is when a person feels subtly exposed in front of other people, not humiliated, not openly attacked, just revealed. Maybe you mention something personal in a group. Maybe you challenge their version of events. Maybe you notice a contradiction they hoped would pass. The eyes go blank because social self-protection activates. They stop showing. They stop signaling. They pull inward while remaining physically present, and the silence that follows feels sharper than words. The third is when an interaction shifts from surface to real too quickly. This happens in arguments, in dating, in family conversations, in work meetings. Everything seems ordinary. Then one sentence changes the level of honesty in the room. Now there is more emotion than the person can comfortably display, so instead of expressing it, they flatten. Their eyes stop participating. And you feel that change like a door quietly closing. What most people get wrong is assuming the blank look tells you exactly what the person feels. It does not. It does not automatically mean they do not care. It does not automatically mean they are lying. And it does not automatically mean they are cruel. Sometimes blank eyes show detachment, sometimes resentment, sometimes shame, sometimes overload, Sometimes a learned habit from years of hiding reaction. The look is real, but the reason behind it is not always what people assume. Another mistake is thinking the blankness is the emotion itself. Often, it is the cover placed over the emotion, a quick protective layer, a freeze over moving water. What disappears is not feeling. What disappears is visible access to feeling. That distinction matters, because once you understand that, the moment becomes less mysterious, still uncomfortable, but less confusing. So what should you notice next time? First, notice the timing. Blank eyes do not appear randomly. They usually arrive right after something lands. A question, a boundary, a correction, a mention of the past, a moment of intimacy. Do not just study the expression. Study what happened 1 second before it. Second, notice whether the face and body still match. Sometimes the mouth keeps a polite shape while the eyes disconnect. Sometimes the posture freezes. Sometimes the voice remains calm, but a strange stillness enters it. That mismatch tells you a lot. The person may be trying to hold the social surface together while pulling their inner response out of view. Third, notice what happens after the blankness. Do they change the subject? Do they become overly rational? Do they laugh at the wrong moment? Do they go quiet? Do they become oddly formal? The blank look is often not the whole reaction. It is the doorway into the reaction. What follows tells you whether you just touched fear, anger, shame, or emotional shutdown. And maybe the most important thing to understand is this: what disturbed you was not your imagination. You were not being dramatic. You were sensing a break in emotional reciprocity, a brief collapse in visible connection. That is a real thing. Your nervous system picked up on a sudden absence of mutual signal. That is why the moment felt colder than it looked. You were not just noticing eyes. You were noticing a person pulling back from contact, maybe to protect themselves, maybe to control what leaked out, maybe because something in them locked for a second. But you felt the lock. That is what stayed with you. And once you see it clearly, a strange relief appears. Because the blank look is not always a sign that nothing is happening. Very often it means too much is happening behind the surface. Too much tension, too much self-control, too much unspoken reaction. The eyes go blank when the inner world becomes hard to manage and harder to show. That does not make every blank stare harmless. Sometimes it is contempt. Sometimes it is deliberate emotional withdrawal. Sometimes it is the first visible sign that warmth has left the room. But even then, what you sensed was real, a hidden shift, a shut door, a silence that meant more than silence. If this gave language to something you have felt but never fully understood, stay with Novi mind. There is a lot more hiding in ordinary expressions than most people realize. And once you start seeing these shifts, you cannot unsee them. Subscribe if you want more psychology that explains the moments people feel but rarely name. And in the next video, we are going to look at another reaction that feels small on the surface but changes everything underneath. The moment someone smiles right when they feel threatened. That one reveals more than it should.